I already made a video of my gripes with issues with PC gaming that kind of just get accepted as things that will happen. So now it's time to do the console counterpart, considering I started seeing some people think I was biased towards console, and oh no, now it is console's time for me to bitch. My first gripe immediately, controllers. Controllers are the most important part of a console because the console can't work like a controller, but the controller can work like the console. So they're extremely important, and my gripe has to do with how many features are put into controllers nowadays that companies just don't really use. I feel like I could put about this in a different video, but I'll go more here where it's stuff like, we improved the vibration. Okay, alright. I haven't seen vibration really used much or any actual interesting way in the slightest. So yeah, you now have the haptic feedback on the DualSense or the HD rumble on the Joycons and Pro Controller for the Switch and Switch 2, and I'm not sure what Xbox has actually, but it's one of those things that's like improved vibration. Okay, vibration wasn't that great to begin with. I used to use vibration a lot until my friends convinced me vibration's kind of and it's like, yeah. So one of those things that's like, okay, it's a feature, but I don't really use that at all, and not really any unique thing the games really do with it. If I've seen specific ones for PlayStation consoles, will include stuff like, oh, the Lightborn, the DualShock 4 DualSense that is supposed to be used to differentiate, like, if you're playing multiplayer games, like who's on which team. And there are some games that try to use that, like Until Dawn, that used it in a pretty creative way. But it's not the only example I got. Otherwise, just a giant light bar that there are some games that will use it to signify information. Like in like Yakuza 0, you change fighting styles, then the light bar will change colors, which is a neat way of using it. But if you're the one playing, you're not looking down the controller to notice the light changing. So I don't really feel that's really useful information, especially with information the game tells you. It's not like saying like, let's say the Dreamcast VMU unit, which I think actively replaced showing you in the menus for like Resident Evil games, showing you your condition on the controller. Where I think, okay, that's trying to be a more unique way, although it's still kind of a weird way of just, hey, we took the information you normally see on the screen, but now it's here, kind of thing. Or how the Wii had freaking speakers on the controller for certain effects, but most of the time just used for, oh, if someone's calling you in the game, then they'll call you through the Wiimote for immersion. You get lower audio quality for this part of the game because immersion. And then the DualShock 4 did that, and the DualSense as well, where a lot of the times those speakers just be used if a game has someone calling you, and that's about it. It's like, great, I now have the audio coming from my controller at lower quality than if it were coming from the TV where I hear everything else. Like, I get it, it's supposed to be like immersive. I just don't get the appeal of it. And these are just features in the controller that just made the controllers more and more expensive, so to be bigger than a regular controller. As I prefer a regular controller, especially be cheaper, with prices of controllers keep going up and up and up. And it's just like, I don't feel these features are used much or useful at all. Like, I know technically, because I said how controllers can be used outside the console, that technically it's not a console thing itself, but it is what the console manufacturers advertise with the controllers, and I just don't see the appeal, especially nowadays where controllers keep bugging out with drift and other problems, that controllers are now so expensive for features developers won't really use, and they don't last a long time. Even something like, oh, the DualSense freaking Edge Pro, whatever, it allows you to swap out the control sticks. You're gonna pay like $200 for a controller just to swap out just something the controller should do naturally. And even then, I believe Sony doesn't really make more analog sticks, so they basically just trick people to buying like a expensive controller for nothing. I mean, at least something like Microsoft, I believe, lets you make custom designs on the controllers to buy them, which is freaking amazing, and I wish other companies did that kind of thing, because making your own custom controller sounds pretty badass and great and more personalized. My other graphics controller still exists, but hey, at least you can make one more personalized as opposed to, wait to see if a company makes their own unique brand, which a lot of times they just make like a sticker layout, but hey, it's better than literal nothing, I guess. Now we got the games, specifically games that don't get ported for one reason or another. Yes, developers have to port their game because future hardware may not support the game for one reason or another, so they had to alter the game in some way, shape, or form. So it makes sense, to me at least, why you would have to repurchase the game, although granted sometimes the ports can cost more than the original release of the game, that's where it becomes flat out bullshit. But there's many games out there that won't get ported, either because developers can't do it, like let's say for example PS3 first party games that many people would love to have ports. Like recently people have shown their demand for wanting Infamous 1, 2, Festival of Blood to get remastered, and Nate Fox actually did mention how they would love to do more with Infamous, but they're a one game studio, so they can only work on one project at a time. So there's hope for that, but it's one of those things that people feel like should have happened a long time ago, especially after they released Second Son and First Light on PS4. But those are like some examples where apparently the hardware for the PS3 is so specific and trying to import games is a struggle. It didn't stop y'all from porting Last of Us to PS4 immediately, but that's besides the point, I guess. But there's just stuff like that, or they'll have versions of games that will then get worse versions down the road. Like, for example, Jak and Daxter Collection on PS3 is the best version because it's a native port for that console, but then like the PS4 to PS5 version is just PS2 emulation, so it's inferior to the PS3 version, which sucks for fans of that. Or even something like recent Final Fantasy remasters, like Final Fantasy remasters for 8 and 9, well, they'll try and do stuff to boost it up, but end up adding more downsides, whether it be like, the backgrounds look worse, the character models are made to look better, but only the main characters, so side characters and the backgrounds look worse by comparison, or they alter the frame rate of the menus, causing it to be less responsive to the PS1 original. Stuff like that, where just later ports just aren't exactly better than original counterparts, which is an issue. Like PC games, since they're all on one platform, they're all there. Granted, whether or not they work is up for debate due to operating systems, updates, and everything. Might need a fan mod, fan fixes, but I can at least admit having at least a game that might need fan fixes or may partially work is better than not having any option whatsoever. So it is better on that front for PC, but it's one of those things where people don't accept having their games not being ported, especially if their game is more niche, like Sonic Shuffle. Many people bash Sonic Shuffle or don't give it a time of day. I know people who enjoy Sonic Shuffle. Sonic Shuffle ain't ever getting ported ever at this point, because when it comes to porting games, companies usually port games to have their highest reputation because they want the games to sell. I'm not going to port a game that's either not well liked or the will, but via a collection. Like Metal Gear Solid Master Collection actually includes the NES version of Metal Gear 1 and 2, which are not good. Well, specifically Metal Gear 2 on NES, not good. When I go on NES, it's not terrible, but it's just not as good as the original. But that's a cool thing, getting, this game that had a good reputation got ported, but it's only part of a collection, where it can be bundled as a bonus with all these other well-liked games. But a game by itself that's not has a reputation probably won't, or hardware reasons, like I recently went to the Boktai games, which have never been ported anywhere because of the whole Solar Center thing. And I still want Konami to port them one day, but it's one of those things where companies won't do it for one reason or another. And I know it's not an accepted thing. People always complain, they always get upset, they always want their game to be supported later because the fact of they love them, they love those games. Or how companies will use emulation for some of their older titles that they can't natively port, but then won't just do that for other games either. Like I mentioned, Jak and Daxter on PS4, PS5 is emulation, but then they won't emulate many of the other catalog games as well. So it's one of those things where companies have the access to emulation, but then won't use it to its full extent. Or it'll be like Nintendo Online, where all the games they're emulated, but you need a subscription service. You can't just buy the games outright, which I would prefer because I don't want to just pay monthly for a subscription service to play the games. I'd rather own them and play them whenever I feel like it. But it's one of those things where people generally like NSO, even though it's weird seeing people constantly have to hope to see get a game they enjoy or might enjoy from the announcement, rather than just seeing games they actively want to get ported, or the fact that some games get pulled from the service, which is a horrible precedent, but it's one of those things that companies just kind of do. You just have to, you shouldn't accept it. No, don't accept it. Don't accept it. Another gripe I have with consoles is also the fact there's the PS3 and Xbox 360 era, consoles essentially just become basically lesser PCs because they don't really have anything unique to make them stand out anymore. Nintendo still tries, but to a certain extent, like, it's the PS3 360, it's like, yeah, you can now do online, well, online more reliably because previous consoles had online. You now have online download games, which I guess once again other consoles had that before. You get the idea. It was more reliable, in quotation marks. But it's one of those things where it's like, okay, we got that, we got a custom theme for the console, at least for the PS3, stuff like that. But then it was just dead like, hey, what's the PS4? Oh, it's the PS3, but more powerful. Any unique gimmick? No. Okay. Xbox One, what can it do? You can plug in your cable box to watch TV on it. Okay, kind of redundant. What else? That's about it. Oh. I may see maybe they'll say on Nintendo, or they expect Nintendo to be the odd one out making new consoles and new gimmicks, which they had been, but that also means, you know, they're taking a risk on something that may not work with the public, especially when compared to competitors are just doing the same thing but more powerful, and people generally are fine with that. That's why I was confused when people initially were mad at Switch 2's reveal and being like, it's just a Switch more powerful. Yeah, that's what many people wanted. What's the complaint? But people wanted something more whimsical, something more amazing. It's like, how about y'all demand that from Sony and Xbox as well? Like, at least be for everyone, do something different rather than just doing, oh, it's just a PC, but a PC can do more stuff than just gaming, while consoles are designed just for gaming, which is why I don't like the comparison of PC versus console. They're both different devices that have different goals, so weird comparison. It's the fact that they don't really have anything really to make them stand out or any new feature other than more powerful games. I mean, developers had to spend more money making the games, and the games had to be higher priced, and had to have less content because developers are focusing more on power or anything else, and I made a whole video about that, but it's one of those things where it's like, there's no pizzazz. Nothing really makes them stand out, other than people say, well, they're a box that goes, so it's a simple option. To which I say, you can buy a PC that goes. You don't got to go to that effort building one. You just buy one pre-made, go to Best Buy, buy one, done. Simple. So that argument doesn't really make sense with me, especially when consoles then have, oh, here's the Pro re-release and stuff like that. You mentioned the Switch, and the Switch has its gimmick, but its gimmick is just, now the console game is portable. Okay. Thanks for killing handheld games forever. I know people try to say, handheld games exist because Switch. No, handheld games were made for devices they were on, and with limitation everything to kind of experience where to go for. Boktai will never be released on Switch, so that's my case in point. That's my bullet point for why that's the same thing. Or, surprisingly, the Switch never have a game like Yoshi's Topsy-Turvy required constantly moving the console back and forth. Stuff like that. Stuff like that that a Switch would not do. I mean, look how people treat Pokemon, which has always been a handheld franchise by Game Freak, but since the Switch is also a console, people now expect a higher standard from it to be like console quality, and it's like, these people have not been making console Pokemon games at all, or now you expect the world from them. Kind of one of those things. So yeah, I kind of wish the console just had something more set them apart, rather than just being pick the box you like and that's it. As an example, weird porting, it's just a Final Fantasy franchise. Obviously, there's many spin-offs that can't be played on systems nowadays, so let's just focus on the mainline games. On Nintendo with the Switch, you got Final Fantasies 1 through 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 10-2, no 11, you got 12, in fact I think you got the best version of 12 on the Switch, no 13, no 14, you got Pocket Edition of 15, which is still 15, so that's a version of it, and no 16. On PlayStation, you have 1 through 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 10-2, none of the 13 games, 14, 15, and 16. That's very impressive. Just missed the 13 games. Why people want the 13 games to get remasters like the other entries. Then you have Xbox. The effing Xbox has access to nearly every mainline entry except for 11 because it was discontinued on Xbox. But thanks to the Xbox Series ability, backwards compatibility, it actually has almost every entry since it got access to 360, which means access to the 13 trilogy, which is incredibly impressive. PC has every mainline Final Fantasy game on it, and I've seen people actually applaud the fact that PC has access to it, the fact that Square Enix put all those games on PC. Granted, some of their quality may not be the best, but it's also the fact that he even kept both remastered version of Final Fantasy VIII and the original Final Fantasy VIII, same with the original Final Fantasy VII PC port, for those options as well, which is super cool. That's pretty dope. But look at that, like Final Fantasy is only fully available on PC, but not on console for one reason or another, with Xbox being your best bet on console for the Final Fantasy franchise. I repeat that. The fucking Xbox is your best bet for playing all of mainline Final Fantasy on a console. And there are people that think Final Fantasy belongs on PlayStation. Which is also not true. It was on Nintendo because the franchise started. You goddamn fools. What is revisionist history? I know 7 was a big thing, but chill your roll. Another gripe I have when it comes to consoles is the console manufacturers want to emphasize power. The power of the systems. Unbridled power. And while I mentioned the issue of developers trying to make games as graphically intense as possible that bloat development costs, I have a different thing to focus on. They emphasize all this power in the console, and yet many games still have to give you the option for higher performance or higher graphical fidelity. If these consoles supposed to be as good as they are, shouldn't it just have both? But just have both? Like, I enjoy the option. I remember really liking the option when Fire Emblem Warriors came out on Switch. Get an option of 60 FPS at 720p or 30 FPS at 1080p. So I appreciate the option existing, but it's the fact that you want to brag how powerful these consoles are, and then have the limitation of, oh, I can't do both these things actually. So it's not nearly as powerful as you make it out to be. I'm always going to choose higher performance because that affects gameplay more than just graphics. So it's one of those whole entire weird aspects where they want to brag how powerful the system is, but then highlight how it generally can't do both, which was one of the selling points of the PS5 Pro, that this can do both. That's what the main goddamn console should have done. What the hell? So it's just one of those things that's like, they want to brag how good their system are, but then just highlight how it isn't as good as they're making it out to be, which again, they want to sell the system, they want to upset it, they want you to be proud to have it. But I also prefer it if you didn't just lie to my face constantly and actually did the thing you're supposed to do and not make a revision down the road that actually does the thing. Or how Xbox also kneecaps themselves because of Xbox Series X and S. Like, the idea is a cool idea of a cheaper version of the console that's not as powerful but can still play the games. The problem then becomes that, oh, all Xbox games need an S version, which means that games either have to be toned down for it, just like how many games still come out on PS4, so to be a PS4 game first and foremost that just has a PS5 version as opposed to an actual PS5 version of the game, or a PS5 game specifically. Or the fact that Xbox, as a result, has some games come late because the developers don't want to make an S version, so it's like, oh, well, we don't want to downgrade the game, so we'll see you later, Xbox fans, okay? So it's one of those one-time weird aspects where these are the most powerful consoles. It doesn't feel like it. It feels like it's still like something still being kneecapped that somebody should perform. But once again, I'd rather y'all not spend all your dev budget on graphics and instead be making better games. I know some companies are dedicated to that, like how I believe Nintendo recently said they're gonna focus more on smaller experiences, which is freaking cool because AA games are awesome. People need to appreciate more AA games and the unique ideas they bring that AAA game won't take the risk on. That's a whole different topic. You know what? Correction. The PS4 did try going to VR with the PSVR, and the PS5 had its own VR setup, but it's one of those things that, once again, developers don't really use. This case more so because the idea of the devices are so expensive that it's kind of hard for a developer to decide to make an entire game solely around the thing, and then on top of the expectation of people buying the VR headset and everything. So it's one of those things where it's an idea they could try and pursue, but the cost of it ends up not being worth it much for developers to really go into, so kind of gets ignored entirely as a result. Or how Xbox 360 did try to Kinect, and then made the Kinect 2 for the Xbox One, but once again, Microsoft didn't really fully invest in the idea, especially since I believe the original 360 Kinect was supposed to be more powerful than it was, but got its power cut for cost measure, which again, it's a costly thing to do, so ended up not being well to use. Like when I had one, it kind of sucked. So developers didn't want to use it, and as a result, games weren't really made for it, or really take advantage of the pluses of it. When the Xbox One originally launched, forcing you to have the Kinect 2, but then later dropped the requirement, so it's kind of one of those things where they tried to make it more of a thing, but once again, never really fully commit to the idea of the Kinect, so yeah, I guess I can count that as they did try something different during those eras. It's just one of those things that's like, cool idea on concept, but execution, it's kind of hard to get both developers and consumers invested in it, even though I know for a fact the Kinect actually is a crap ton. I also need to add my DualSense exclusive gripe, where they changed the face buttons from having different unique colors for each face button that PlayStation has done since the beginning, to all just being the same white color, and from a distance it makes it very hard to decipher which face button is which, especially when the game wants you to push a prompt fast. And Sony, why? Why would you do that to the DualSense? Why would you take away the unique colors of each of the buttons? It helped distinguish them. Why do this? I think the only positive I can give to a DualSense is the fact that you can use the built-in microphone to record audio. In fact, here are snippets from some videos I actually recorded with the DualSense controller's microphone of all things. So let's get this main point out of the bag, because one of the things that drew people's attention. This game looks amazing, especially being the first 3D entry of this game. I know people nowadays try to be like, oh, it looks ugly, shut up, it was HD for its time. Originally released on the PlayStation 2 in 2003, because when Limit of Innocence came to be, and I've heard like nothing about this game whatsoever. That's like the only comment I can give to it, but not to a point where it costs so much just to get one. And of course, gotta mention it, or technically did for a bit, freaking paying for online. I know many people hate it. You'll probably see some person with a verified Twitter account on Twitter constantly saying that in order to get engagement bait, but it's still also true. I hate that whole entire aspect. That's why I don't pay for online in order to use the feature for console. I just don't use it at all. It's a vicious cycle of, I want to do an idea that requires online, but I don't have it. I don't want to pay for it. But also, I can't use video. I don't have this, but I want to pay for this, and then vicious cycle over and over kind of thing. But just something that I just hate it, especially since they try to make it seem like it's some deal of, look at all these bonuses. Now it feels like the online thing is the bonus and everything else, subscription service like PS Plus the games, or NSO with also their games, or Xbox Live, which for the longest time, you needed Xbox Live to do anything online. Even watch Netflix used to be that case, and play free-to-play games online. But eventually, they dropped that after, I swear to God, they accidentally made Fable 3 free one day. I do not believe they intentionally made Fable 3 by itself free for Xbox Live Gold people, and then just went, oh yes, this is totally a thing we're planning for a new service where we get games with gold. No, I don't believe you. Y'all did that by accident. People mass claimed it, and your PR people found a way to spin it into a positive. But just one of those things where, yes, many people mention it. I've seen people also try to have the attitude of, why would you buy the console and not also pay for online? Because I already spent expensive amount of money on an expensive console. Why would I also pay for online then afterwards? What the hell do I look like to you? I don't like that argument, but I just don't use online. So it's because of a vicious cycle. That's something online, I think, was for Monster Hunter World, and that was because a friend basically offered that because he wanted someone to play Monster Hunter World online with, so he paid for the PS Plus in order for that to happen, because I wasn't going to do that myself, because I don't really have games I want to play online for. Like, it's one of those things I just don't want it. At the same time, if you argue, well, you don't want to use online, then why would you want it? Because it's a vicious cycle of, hey, here's the thing, that's an online mode. Oh, I can't use it for online. I don't want to pay for online, so I just play single-player games. As a result, I don't have multiplayer games to play online with, because I'm not going to pay for online, and you see the cycle again. You see the cycle. I did have, like, NSO for, like, a year at one point, and I did, like, nothing with it. You know, I did have multiplayer games. It's also absurd what kind of stuff requires online. Like, even stuff like online leaderboards require online. Or even something like, let's say Tekken 8 has Tekken Lounge. You get bonuses for some single-player content. But in order to be in the Tekken Lounge to begin with, you need PS Plus, which is freaking ridiculous just to even claim single-player bonuses or fight freaking ghost data of developers. So I just go, oh well, guess I just won't do it. And stuff like PS Plus never entices me because, like, oh, here's a random rare game we pulled from a bag and threw onto a table and go, here, have at it. What I want that? Like, that's one thing I don't get. I don't get the appeal of services where you also don't know what you're getting. Just random stuff thrown at you, clap, maybe, who knows, kind of thing. Like, I just don't like the whole pay for online. They're going to find to keep making it more and more expensive for a service that not only should be paid for, should be paid to begin with, but also isn't worth the money, at least in my opinion. So just to grab some, I wanted to mention when it comes to my issues with console gaming. I wanted to make this just because I already made the one on PC, so it would only be fair to mention any gripes I have with consoles, but my biggest one is still the controllers. They're so expensive. They keep getting more expensive. Companies don't use the features. Can't just get a simple controller that's cheaper. Like, I'm not using all this crap. I'm not using all this crap you're putting in the controller for blow. And they're somehow less durable. So, that's what I wanted to mention. Alrighty then. Good day. Play some games. Hopefully on a console you enjoy, or on a controller you enjoy. Alrighty then. That is all.